Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Welcome into the Chris Hand Show. We are live. I am in lovely Phoenix, Arizona today. The guys at Turning Point USA are kind enough to let me borrow their studios while I'm in town, linking up on a couple projects, and I'm eternally grateful for that. It's amazing when I get to come down here and be surrounded by a team of conservatives in media. It doesn't really happen often, to be perfectly honest with you. Media is one of those landscapes where you don't have a lot of conservatives. Weird, I know. But if you look at the news cycle right now, it's not hard to see that. We've had this mass shooting last night in Maine, and everything seems to start pointing towards the normal narratives of gun control, assault weapons bans. Convenient enough, Kamala Harris was tweeting yesterday about an assault weapons ban. It's convenient. What do we know so far about this mass shooting in Lewistown, Maine? The suspect is an Army reservist who was reportedly hearing voices and threatened to shoot up a base. That's what's being reported. Robert Card is the person of interest in the shootings. This is from the Post-Millennial that killed at least 22 people, injured 50 others at multiple locations across Maine last night. And he was reportedly dealing with mental health issues. He was claiming to be hearing voices. But according to the government, Maine's own information, when they released this out, he worked for them. He's a firearms instructor. He's an Army reservist stationed out of Saco, Maine. And according to law enforcement, Card recently reported mental health issues, including hearing voices, threatened to shoot up a National Guard base in Maine, and he was reported to have been committed to a mental health facility for 2 weeks during the summer. And then he was subsequently released. So part of me feels like this guy was looking for help. It seems like he was looking for help, and he didn't get it. And that's where some of my first questions come up. Why didn't he get the help that he needed? Why did they let him go if he was, trained, armed, dangerous, credible threats, hearing voices? I don't know. There's a lot of questions that need to be asked as we're still gathering facts. But I do think it's important to gather facts before you start crafting narratives. And it seems like a lot of people are crafting narratives right now. At least if you listen to Mockingbird Media, left-wing news, it is all assault weapons bans. How could this happen? We need stricter gun laws. The Democrats will never let a crisis go to waste. During a press conference Wednesday night, law enforcement cautioned that Card should be considered armed and dangerous. I don't believe that they have caught the man yet. There's a manhunt for him. Officials in Lewiston also posted a picture of a white Subaru Outback that they potentially believe is related to the investigation. Residents of Lewistown and nearby Auburn are being told to shelter in place. Officials are cautioned if you see Card, not to approach him. I mean, it's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Even the Boston FBI division is getting involved with this. And it didn't take any time at all, though, for Democrats to start jumping in the mix before the suspect is even apprehended to criticize a lack of gun control. There's a woman by the name of Shannon Watts. She's the founder of Moms Demand Action. And she's jumping on the internet and tweeting last night, again, before the suspect has even been apprehended, before the facts are even known. And she's tweeting about gun control. She says Maine does not require background checks on all gun sales, have a red flag law, prevent domestic abusers from accessing guns, ban assault weapons, limit magazine capacity, require concealed permits, restrict open carry. I mean, she doesn't mention that everything she's accusing Maine of lacking, a state like California has. And also, California last year led, in 2021, led the nation in active shooter incidents. From Breitbart.com, while Watts criticized Maine's gun control facts before facts about the shooting were known, or even a suspect or suspects were apprehended. I mean, this means that she's offering her criticism at a time when no one even knows how this attacker got his guns. But nobody has any idea. we haven't even there's probably families that hadn't been notified, and people are jumping into the narrative game. Super sad. The Sun Journal and CNN are reporting that there are only 2 shooting locations: Spare Time Recreation and Shemenji's Bar and Grill. The Sun Journal reported that the first shooting occurred at the Spare Time Recreation shortly after 7 p.m. and the second at this bar and grill restaurant. Now, there was a third shooting reportedly that was being reported that occurred at a Walmart distribution center about 1 hour after the Spare Time Recreation, but Walmart issued a statement late on Wednesday saying there was no shooting on the property. So again, there's all this confusion on what's happening, and people are already throwing their hats in the ring to talk about gun control. Fascinating. Not surprising. This is what Democrats do. They will never let a crisis go to waste. They will never fail to politicize something like this. They just won't. It's sad, but that's their MO. That's what they do. They politicize these situations. They try to make gun ownership seem bad. However, I felt like when Maine was telling people to shelter in place, I felt like the better option would be arm yourself and shelter in place. That's what I would have done. But it's sad. I feel for the families. We send all of our prayers out to anyone dealing with loss in this tragedy, and it is a tragedy. This stuff shouldn't be happening. But it does. And it doesn't stop people from talking about removing your rights because of it. And that's what this is going to boil down to at the end of the day. The conversation is going to move to limiting your rights as a gun owner. And I don't think that's fair at all. I don't think a crazy person with a gun should limit my rights in any way, or yours. But they're going through his Twitter account. People are posting that, he liked things from Tucker Carlson. He liked right-wing news. So, get ready for the domestic terrorist narrative to be ramped back up. Get ready for it. This poor guy reportedly tried to get help. And apparently it wasn't taken seriously enough. And I think that's something that is going to be missed in this when the narrative evidently switches to gun control happening right before our eyes. Mental health is the issue here. In 1955, there's like 160 million Americans. Today, we got, 330 plus legal, but without taking in the illegals, right? So in 1955, we had 160. In 1955, we had 560,000 mental asylum patients, mental health hospitals. Today, we have 35,000 mental health hospital patients. The thing that's not being addressed and what's being ignored is that we have a mental health crisis in this nation. In 1955, with half of the population that we have on the books today, we had 540,000 more mental health patients in mental health hospitals. I think we need to bring back mental health hospitals. I think that's what this boils down to. If this man actually self-reported himself, actually went and checked into a mental health facility, and then he was discharged for some reason, like they didn't have the beds for him, that's a tragedy. He was sent to a mental health facility over the summer. He threatened to shoot up a base. They released him. They released him. This is a failure on them. This isn't a failure on guns. The man had mental health issues. So I don't want to, I want to wait until more facts come out, because by tomorrow, there could be a new report that says, that mental health thing was false. That he never checked in. The way the news cycle works, it's going to quickly change. But right now, to me, it appears that this gentleman worked for the government, was an Army reservist, and was apparently known by the government to be having a major mental health issue. He was threatening to engage in mass shootings. He went to a mental health facility, and they released him. I just don't understand how this is going to turn into a gun ownership issue, how this is going to turn into we need to ban assault weapons. And it absolutely is. It's absolutely going to turn into that. There's no way around it. I want to know what you think about this whole thing. 615-737-9986. 615-737-9986. You can text in as well. Super text lines working. Phone lines are working. I may be in Arizona, but we can still link up and connect. 3776 says, regardless, not a poor guy. Well, I'm saying if you're having that kind of severe mental health issue, I feel for you. Is he a monster for doing what he did? Yes. Did he try to get help and not get it? It appears that way. It appears that way. 8126 says, mental health care is for the wealthy. Many psychiatrists are cash only, no insurance. 1684, where's the accountability for the mental institution? There will be no accountability for the mental institution. They'll just blame the guns, and they'll just limit rights. 5191 said, in the 70s, we closed 3 mental health facilities right here in Nashville. Been closing them all over the country. And then we wonder, why is there a mental health crisis in this nation? It's sad. The whole situation is sad. Prayers to the family and, any of the victims. It's something that you never want to happen. But it seems like it happens all the time. And it seems like no matter when it happens, it's going to come back to gun owners, and legal gun owners. Robert on line 1, you have a comment on the shooting last night. Robert, you're on Super Talk. What's up, man?
I'm thinking, what if someone just got this guy out and instigated him to do this?
I
wouldn't be surprised.
It's like one of those things. Do we go down that lane now? I don't know. Would it shock me? Nothing would shock me in this day and age. You look at all of the for instance, what comes to mind is the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot, which was really just a bunch of FBI agents. And I feel like that's what kind of you're getting at. But I mean, until there's proof of it, we're just as bad as the Democrats pointing our fingers and saying, well, maybe he got set up, maybe it was this, maybe it was that. But I totally get where you're at, and I would be lying to you if I said I haven't gone there. My thoughts haven't gone there as well. Thanks for the call, Robert. I appreciate it. Tim in Nashville, you have a comment on the shooting. Tim, you're on Super Talk. What's up, man?
Hey, Chris. Welcome to Tennessee. This is the first time I've called your show.
Hey, appreciate you, man. What's up?
Unfortunately, Chris, our world is filled with evil people that are out to do evil things. And every time we have a situation like this rise, the Democrats start throwing out gun laws. It's like you said, they never fail to rise during a crisis and try to force their agendas on the American people. My thoughts and prayers go out with these families in Maine. I can't imagine what they're going through. I hope they catch whoever did it. I'm not going to point the finger at this guy because I don't think there's enough information out there yet to start pointing fingers. But
I'm in the same boat as you, and I feel like that's a Democrat thing to do. They start saying, "Oh, it was the guns' fault. We have to ban guns for everyone."
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm a legal gun owner and proud of it, and no one's going to take my rights away from me. The Democrats are insane. I'm sorry, but they just act so insane sometimes. And it makes me feel like there's not a brain in any of their heads. So that's all I got to say, Chris. I love your show, man. You're doing a great job. Thanks for taking my call, okay?
Hey, Tim, thanks so much for calling in. You're welcome anytime, my man. I really appreciate you. And yeah, I agree with Tim. It's like, let's not point fingers. Let's wait for information. These things suck. These stories are awful. But the Democrats will never let a crisis go to waste. So be on the lookout for more pushes for stricter gun laws, gun control, and, laws to limit your rights. Because that's what they do. I got a text here from 3886. He said, I keep noticing my sidearm just sits around and it never hurts anyone. He goes, I'm all for helping people and keeping my firearms. And I think that's the thing. Mental health care, it seems like in this country, is laughable at best. And if this person really did try and get help and he didn't get the help he needed when he was out there looking for it, begging for it, if that story is true, I do. I feel for him. I feel for the families. Prayers out to everyone in Maine. As more information becomes available on this story, we'll have it for you right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Hey, it's Chris Hanford, my friends at Paul Winkler, Inc. I got 4 kids. Me and my wife, we have to have a financial plan for the future because the future's uncertain. So with 4 kids, I'm thinking about possibly paying for college, hopefully paying for some weddings, and, none of those goals are going to be achievable without a financial plan. And I've been a listener of Paul's radio show since I moved to Nashville quite a few years ago, like 8 years ago now. So after getting to meet with him and realizing he's the same guy I heard on the air, smart, honest, and legit, I was all in. And Paul and his team hold themselves to a higher level of fiduciary standard than is required. Because of that, government regulators do what government regulators do, and I'm required to tell you that I'm paid every time this commercial airs. But it's because I got to sit down with Paul, break bread, have my questions answered, that I decided to become a client myself. I'm impressed with Paul's team and his knowledge. Paul's a smart guy. He knows the financial world way better than I do. And with Paul and his team, I say this a lot, nothing is done on commission. It's so important to me because I know that they're helping me make the right decisions for my family, not helping me make the right decisions for their family. That's huge. Huge. He's made my financial goals far more realistic by explaining what to do and why. The investment education is evidence-based and backed by Nobel Prize-winning research. So do what I did. Check them out. Every office run by a degreed planner with over 20 years of experience. You can feel the difference between Paul's team and the rest. So do what I did. Talk to one of his team members. Set up a complimentary 15-minute phone call on his website, paulwinkler.com. That's paulwinkler.com or call 615-851-1950.
We are waiting on a police update on the Maine mass shootings and manhunt. We'll tell you what we know so far. Also, that Hurricane Otis has turned out to be a real killer. And a Middle Tennessee school district pushing for a new law to enact new punishments for school threats. And that new House Speaker not wasting any time. These stories and more at 9:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Ken Weaver. Got a great text here. It's, instead of sending money to Ukraine, why not help mentally ill Americans? What a concept. That's from 3537. I've been shouting from the rooftops. We send billions overseas, and we have all these problems here at home. And I think mental health is a problem that we've been lacking in addressing. Newman on line one. You have a comment on the shooting. Newman, you're on Super Talk 99.7. What's up?
Hey, I got to, as a teacher, I'm what we call a mandated reporter.
Okay.
So if I suspect anything or if I hear of anything regarding, any kind of things with my kids or whatnot, then I have to contact and report it. So what I'm wondering is when this guy, it's unfortunately we live in an evil world. So, but he had enough wherewithal to at least talk to somebody. If he had enough wherewithal to do that, and then he acted upon, whatever was going on in his mind, why aren't those people who turned him loose be held accountable as well?
I think that that's a great point. It's like they want to hold parents accountable if a child steals a firearm. But I feel like we should be able to hold these people accountable. But again, I want to wait until more info comes out because this thing is still developing. It's still so fresh that until we actually hear, details on what exactly happened, we're just speculating.
That's true. And here's another interesting thing. How soon before we know what was going on with this guy's writing, given that speculation versus the covenant? Perfect example. One we're going to hear right away. It'll be out probably within 24, 48 hours. And the other one we still have no knowledge about.
Yeah. Hey, weird, right? Weird. Thanks for the call, Newman. Really appreciate it. Ken Weaver's News starts right now on Super Talk.
I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. We've got the full forecast in 2 minutes, and right now we are awaiting a police update on the Maine shootings and manhunt. This is from where the city of Lewiston will be holding its press conference. You can hear the press gathered there now, the microphone set up at the podium. We'll get you that information as soon as it is available. Meanwhile, the manhunt there continues for the 40-year-old firearms instructor with a military history and mental illness. He's the person of interest in this mass shooting. At least 16 dead, dozens of others injured, at least 2 crime scenes we know of, a bar, and then 4 miles away, a bowling alley. Cleaning up in Acapulco after a battering by Hurricane Otis. There are 27 dead there, several people still missing. And later today in Middle Tennessee, the Rutherford County School Board expected to vote on a resolution asking for a state law punishing students who make threats against schools by taking away driving privileges. And in our nation's capital, Louisiana Congressman Mike Johnson, the new House Speaker.
Under Speaker Johnson yesterday was a resolution supporting Israel. The House must also take up funding for Ukraine, something Johnson has questioned in the past. Another crucial task is a looming government shutdown, with government funding set to expire November 17th.
Andrea Fujii reporting, and that's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. What's going on? It's Chris Hand. 9:38 in Nashville. I'm in Phoenix, Arizona right now. It's 7:38 here.
Yeah, I'm lonely,
changes, man. I'm going to be messed up because of the time change for probably 2 weeks. Just so everybody knows. I'm not good. I'm not good with these time
substantially
changes.
earlier.
Yeah, I'm not good with the time changes. But I am very comfortable in this nice studio. If you're watching on Super Talk TV, the guys at Turning Point USA let me borrow their studio for today and tomorrow while I'm out here hanging out, working on some things. And it's just very kind of them, and it's a top-notch facility, and kudos to them. I did want to talk about our new Speaker of the House, Big Mike Johnson. I already really like this guy, not going to lie to you. None of the traditional celebrations that normally accompany the election of a new speaker are happening. I love it. I love it. Mike Johnson said, we don't have time. The hour is late. Then he just went back to the Capitol and got to work. It feels like he's going to make Congress work harder. It feels like he's going to be pushing a more aggressive floor schedule. And to that, I say, all right, I'm down. That makes me happy. And I also feel like we made the right choice when you start seeing Democrats melt down, and Democrats are melting down. Absolute, the hashtag not my president screaming going on if you're a Democrat. Amir Musa, a spokesman for the Biden campaign, said MAGA Mike Johnson's ascension to the speakership cements the extreme MAGA takeover of the House Republican Conference. I like it. Joe Biden and Joe Biden did offer congratulations to Johnson. It's the spokesman that's having an issue. Democrats in Congress are deeply displeased, very upset after Johnson secured the gavel on the first ballot. We didn't have to vote twice. It's pretty awesome. Rep. Katie Porter out of California called Mike Johnson an insurrectionist. Insurrectionist Mike Johnson is now second in line to the presidency. The American people deserve better. I just feel like that's such a funny thing to throw around. Insurrectionist. Like, have you seen Mike Johnson? Have you heard the way Mike talks? Like, he doesn't exactly sound like a extremist. But I will say when it comes to faith and freedom, those are extreme ideas for the Democrats. This is Mike Johnson. He's talking about serving through faith, and this, I guess this would be extreme to your average Democrat. Here's Mike Johnson serving through faith.
I want to tell all my colleagues here what I told the Republicans in that room last night. I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. I believe that Scripture, the Bible, is very clear that God is the one that raises up those in authority. He raised up each of you, all of us. And I believe that God has ordained and allowed each one of us to be brought here for this specific moment in this time. This is my belief. I believe that each one of us has a huge responsibility today to use the gifts that God has given us to serve the extraordinary people of this great country, and they deserve it.
I mean, again, to somebody that doesn't have values that include faith and freedom, that would probably sound extreme. It probably does sound extreme to a lot of these atheist satanic Democrats, but I don't know. What do I know? After he won the gavel, Rep. Ilhan Omar, the woman that married her brother, labeled him as a MAGA extremist. She wrote his achievements include seeking an abortion ban and voting against LGBTQ rights. It's like, you don't have to sell me on the guy. With this choice, she added, the Republicans have embraced the extreme MAGA playbook. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. It's like your boos mean nothing. We've seen what makes you cheer. Donald Trump weighed in. He said congrats to Big Mike Johnson. Congratulations to Rep. Mike Johnson, Trump posted on Truth Social. He will be a great speaker. Make America great again. Now, it was interesting. I was reading about what Matt Gaetz was saying happened behind the scenes. He said that the Republicans' old guard, the neocons, the old school guys in the Republican Party, were trying to derail Mike Johnson's vote for House Speaker. I thought this was fascinating. So Gates is on the War Room with Steve Bannon, and he says, we get through the this is a quote from Matt Gaetz. We get through the gestation system earlier yesterday. So as Emmer is withdrawing, moderate from New York, freshman Republican, stands up at the microphone and says, well, instead of restarting the process and having a candidate forum sending everybody home for a good cry, let's just take a non-binding poll on where people would be on the person who came in second to Tom Emmer. And that, of course, was Mike Johnson. Well, Elise Stefanik jumped in and said, well, that's against the rules. The rules don't contemplate it. We can't do that. So this freshman congressman out of New York, Mike Molinaro, says, well, then I move for unanimous consent that the rules be waived. And we take a poll on whether or not Mike Johnson could be our speaker nominee. And do you know who object to that unanimous consent request? Kevin McCarthy. Weird. Kevin McCarthy stands up and says, I object to doing a roll call on Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson was exasperated, they say. This is all from Matt Gaetz. He said, all the times Johnson had voted for McCarthy, had carried his water, maybe even voted for some bills he didn't like because he was working toward the Republican conference's stated objectives under McCarthy. And here was the thing. It showed everyone that it was actually McCarthy who was working to knife Scalise. It was actually McCarthy who was working to knife Jim Jordan. It was McCarthy working to knife everyone, and he hadn't yet figured out a way to knife Mike Johnson. And so he was worried that there was going to be this great unifying moment, and he scuttled the unifying moment. So because of McCarthy's objection, we had to have a 3-hour delay, and candidates announce again. Have another forum, and guess what happens during the delay? Steve Patrick McHenry runs to the House floor, opens it up out of recess, and then adjourns until noon today. So McCarthy's out there working with his boys to delay getting Mike Johnson in there. I'm so happy McCarthy's out. You read stuff like this, and it's like, he really is the rhino we thought he was. Matt Gaetz goes on, they were promising people hearings on their favorite legislation, passage of bills. I heard people promised, oh, maybe you'll get a chairmanship. And the play was for McCarthy to return as speaker, and then Jim Jordan to be deputy speaker in some sort of way, like Dwight Schrute, assistant to the regional manager posture. And that would have been debasing to Jordan. Someone that I like a great deal, says Matt Gaetz. And it would have been empowering to McCarthy. So McCarthy was working behind the scenes to get power back for himself. Shocking. Matt Gaetz goes on, and then Mike Johnson says, you know what I want? I want a roll call vote. Do you know how many people voted for Kevin McCarthy during that roll call? 0. So they went from promising 100 votes, delivering 43, to 0 willing to vote for Kevin McCarthy. And you know, at the end of the day, we got Mike Johnson, and I can't be mad at that. If you look at what Mike Johnson says, the man seems to be solid. This is Mike Johnson when he's talking about what he feels is the most important issue, which is, of course, the border.
We have a catastrophe at our southern border. The Senate and the White House can no longer ignore the problem. From Texas to New York, wave after wave of illegal migrants are stressing our communities to their breaking points. We know that our streets are being flooded with fentanyl, and all of our communities, children, and even adults are dying from it. The status quo is unacceptable. Inaction is unacceptable, and we must come together and address the broken border. We have to do it.
We do. We have to address the broken border. It is unreal on the border right now. And there's new reports that the Biden DHS is abusing the Immigration Parole Authority with their CBP1 app, which is this app that you get when you cross Customs Border Patrol 1 app. Okay, so this is from Breitbart.com. They said the House Committee on Homeland Security says that the Biden administration is abusing its Immigration Parole Authority by issuing near blanket approvals via this app. Blanket approvals. Documents obtained by the House Committee on Homeland Security after months of stonewalling by the Department of Homeland Security reveal 95.8% of migrant applicants seeking admission to pursue asylum claims are admitted and released into the United States. A 95% approval rating. It's unreal. The migrants are released with minimal vetting. The documents show. The documents also covered the period between January and September 2023, and they show that 266,846 of 278,431 migrants were allowed entry into the United States, a percentage far greater than recorded asylum case approvals by immigration courts. So they're just letting everybody in. Mark Green weighed in on this. He issued a statement saying Secretary Mayorkas has utterly abused the CBP-1 app in his quest for open borders. And it is a quest for open borders. Mark Green went on to say these numbers are proof that Mayorkas and his operation is a smokescreen for the mass release of individuals into this country who would otherwise have zero claim to be admitted. Mark Green continued, at a time when global tensions are rising and our enemies are growing bolder, releasing tens of thousands of these people into our communities, especially when they have not received adequate, if any, vetting, is irresponsible. I would take it a step further. I don't think it's irresponsible. I think it's downright dangerous. Mark Green says it shouldn't take a subpoena threat from Congress to get these answers, but we are going to keep fighting for the truth. And it seems like this is going to be one of the big issues for Mike Johnson as they get back to work in the House, and I'm excited for that. Now, another thing Mike Johnson said, which I thought was fantastic, he was talking about his 7 core principles, the Conservative Party's 7 core principles, and what he's going to be bringing with these principles to the floor. This is Mike Johnson and his 7 core principles. You got me, Mac?
The 7 core principles of American conservatism, but let me concede to you all, I think it's really quintessentially the core principles of our nation. I boil them down to individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Those are the foundations that made us the extraordinary nation that we are. And you and I today are the stewards of those principles. The things that have made us the freest, most powerful, most successful nation in the history of the world. The things that have made us truly exceptional.
Okay, I like what he says. Now, he did already pass a resolution yesterday, his first move as Speaker to support Israel. I want to talk about that resolution, and I want to talk about the people that voted against it, including our friend Thomas Massey. He was not a fan, but I think his reasoning was solid. We'll cover that after the break right here on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Hey everybody, Dan Mattis with Nashville's Morning News on WTN. I'm here at the Nashville Rescue Mission doing the interviews that I look forward to doing every single year. These are incredible stories of people who have had amazing recoveries. Thanks to this amazing facility, they are able to get clean and lead a more productive life. The date of our annual radiothon is going to be Monday, November 20th. Listen in and please donate. You can get more information at 99.7 WTN, including a link to the website for Nashville's Rescue Mission.
Okay, we've got an updated death toll in Maine, and that 40-year-old firearms instructor with a military history and mental illness, who is the person of interest in that mass shooting, is still on the run. We'll tell you everything that authorities are saying right now, coming up at 10 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
That's crazy, man. That whole story is insane. I wish that we could just give it a little time to get the facts before, everybody starts jumping into narrative control. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand. Thanks for joining us here on this Thursday. I am broadcasting live from Phoenix, Arizona. My friends at Turning Point USA were kind enough to let me borrow their studio while I'm in town for a couple days, and it's cozy. It's cozy. If you're watching on Super Talk TV, you can see very nice studios. So I'm grateful to them and thankful. This mass shooting, I just feel like we need to wait until we get all the info. Even on our side, even with the reports that he went to a mental health facility, there and was subsequently released. There are other reports debating the validity of that. I think we just need to pause and get all the info and maybe apprehend the guy before we start talking about gun control. I know it's a tall order for Democrats. They are chomping at the bit to get into the gun control narrative. That's what they want. They don't want an armed citizenry. So gun control will be the move. That'll be the conversation moving forward. It's crazy. And this will dominate the news cycle. It will. And we just had a big win with Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson coming in, becoming the new Speaker of the House. That will evidently, inevitably be swept away and not a big story. But I do want to talk about what he's doing already in the House, including Mike Johnson and the House passing a resolution to support Israel in his first move as Speaker. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about those who opposed, including the Republican that opposed. And we'll do that right after the news, which happens right now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Ten o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. We've got the full forecast coming up in 2 minutes. And right now in Maine, we have an updated death toll, also the number of injured. Still no sign of that 40-year-old firearms instructor with a military history and mental illness, the person of interest in last night's mass shooting. Here's Pierre Thomas.
A law enforcement bulletin sent out to authorities last night describes him as recently hearing voices and threatening to shoot up a National Guard base in Saco, Maine. The bulletin says he was committed to a mental health facility for 2 weeks this past summer. This is literally an all-hands-on-deck situation with hundreds of federal, state, and local law enforcement descending on the scene. The FBI, U.S. Marshals, ATF, all assisting.
So officials holding a news conference right now in the city of Lewiston, Maine. The death toll is up to 18, 13 injured. Some were at a bar, others were at a bowling alley about 4 miles away. There is a lockdown in the city of Lewiston and at least 2 other surrounding communities. No businesses or schools are open today as they look for the suspect. No motive has been determined, according to the governor of Maine. Stay with Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We'll have continuing coverage and get you the very latest as it becomes available. Here in Tennessee, Rutherford County Schools is training substitute teachers to be able to handle lockdowns, even though that's not a requirement for substitutes. The school board tonight will vote on a resolution asking state lawmakers to make it so, also to enact a law that revokes driver's licenses of students if they make threats to schools. School board member Tammy Sharp telling News 2.
I hope if it would deter one person from doing it, that saves us, that trauma from that event from that day.
She plans to take that resolution to the county commission, also the state school board association. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
I love the state of Tennessee. I love everything about it, and I love hunting and fishing in the state of Tennessee, and what you guys do is so great. I was born and raised here, and this song is for Tennessee and everybody in it. Well, I have roamed across the land, and I have sailed deepest sea. When I've drawn my last breath, do this one thing for me. Say, won't you take me back to Tennessee, where southern streams are flowing free. Me and mine, Lord, will always be right at home in Tennessee, right at home in the woods of Tennessee, right at home in Tennessee. Awesome.
.10:04 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand. I am broadcasting from Phoenix. I almost said it's 8:04 because it's 8:04 here. I'm broadcasting. I did. I was like looking at my clock. I was like 8:04. I was like, no, that's not right. 10:04 in Nashville, 8:04 in Phoenix. I'm actually broadcasting live from Phoenix, Arizona right now. Thank you for joining me on the Chris Hand Show. My friends at Turning Point USA were kind enough to let me jump into their studio, and I'm excited to be here. It's very nice. It's very cozy, and I hope that we can talk Dan Mandis into some of these upgrades for our own home studio. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, please. I'm jealous.
Yeah,
you look great over there. That's nice.
It's cozy. It's cozy, man. The cozy is here. Something we've been wishing for a while was a new Speaker of the House. We got one yesterday, Mike Johnson. When Democrats call a soft-spoken, smart guy a radical extremist, I'm pretty sure we got the right guy. And he's pushed through his first move as new Speaker. The House approved a resolution backing Israel yesterday, condemning Hamas. It's the first piece of legislation to move through the lower chamber in more than 3 weeks because of the extended Speaker's stalemate. This is from The Hill. The legislation, which spans 4 pages, was the first measure approved under the leadership of Speaker Mike Johnson, who got that gavel hours before the chamber voted on the resolution. The House approved the resolution in a 412 to 10 to 6 vote, a strong show of support for Israel after Hamas launched that terror attack on October 7th. The resolution declares that the House stands with Israel as it defends itself against the barbaric war launched by Hamas and other terrorists, and reaffirms Israel's right to self-defense. It also condemns Hamas's brutal war against Israel and calls on the U.S. designated terrorist groups to immediately cease these violent attacks and safely release all living hostages and return the bodies of deceased hostages. Hamas has so far released 4 hostages, with an estimated 220 people kidnapped from Israel still in captivity in the Gaza Strip. Americans and other nationalities are believed to be among them. Now, Israel and the U.S. have not confirmed that any hostages have been killed, saying any claims by Hamas cannot be trusted. Wednesday's resolution, for a lot of people, was a long time coming. I mean, for a lot of people, just getting some stuff done in the House has been a long time coming. And lawmakers in both parties and chambers have spoken about their desire to move this resolution forward supporting Israel since these attacks happened. We weren't able to do it because of the speaker standstill that was happening. The House was unable to conduct any business without a permanent speaker in place. And besides this one piece of legislation here, I don't think anybody was clamoring for much from the House. Like we didn't really miss them as they were off for 3 weeks. Johnson did speak about it Wednesday. He said, the country demands strong leadership of this body, and we must not waver. He said, our nation's greatest ally in the Middle East is under attack. The first bill that I'm going to bring to the floor in just a little while will be the support of our dear friend Israel. Johnson said that in the House chamber after winning the gavel, and he said, we're overdue in getting that done. He says we're going to show not only Israel but the entire world that the barbarism of Hamas that we've all seen play out on our television screens and wretched and wrong, and we're going to stand for the good in that conflict, he said. Now, that the House's action in support of Israel it's not going to stop there. We know that the White House unveiled that $100 billion request that would fund Israel, Ukraine, U.S. border security, and Taiwan. Hopefully, Mike Johnson sticks to his guns and gets all of those separated. Because that bill, most Republicans are against. Because they're linking the funding for Israel with Ukraine. And I don't think many Republicans, many conservatives, are really gung-ho about supporting Ukraine anymore. I mean, you can tell me if I'm wrong. 615-737-9986. You're welcome to join the conversation. Phone lines are open. But I'm not excited about sending any more money to Ukraine. You want to support Israel, that's fine. I do worry about how this gets us stuck in a forever war, or if it could get us stuck in a forever war. I worry about the land of unintended consequences that seems to happen every time we get involved in the Middle East. But I'm not specifically against this. Now, some people were against this. The House didn't unanimously clear that resolution yesterday. They didn't. 9 Democrats opposed the resolution. Andre Carson from Indiana, Cori Bush, Al Green, Summer Lee, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, a lot of the usual suspects. And Jamal Bowman also didn't support the resolution. Off topic, but did you hear that Jamal Bowman got charged in the fire alarm incident? Yeah, he did. He was charged in the fire alarm incident, criminally charged. This is Jamal Bowman reacting to being charged in that fire alarm incident. Take a listen.
Not trying to disrupt any, official government proceedings. So I'm glad, the investigation found that was the case. The misdemeanor charge of pulling the alarm, I admitted that from the very beginning. So, gotta take responsibility.
Yeah, gotta take responsibility. I mean, committed a felony, you get a sweetheart deal for a misdemeanor and a $1,000 fine and charges dropped. Yep. I mean, Jamal Bowman, he quite literally got the sweetest of sweetheart deals. He was on the Hunter Biden levels of sweetheart deal. The Attorney General dropped all the charges in 3 months as long as Bowman issues a formal apology and pays a $1,000 fine. Rules for thee, but not for me, right? That's the Democrat Party. Back to the resolution that supported Israel that Jamal Bowman was not in support of. There was a Republican that wasn't in support of it also. Thomas Massie. He put a tweet out, and I want to read this for you because I like Thomas Massie a lot. And he explains why he wasn't supporting House Resolution 771, which was supporting Israel. He put this out on Twitter yesterday. He said, I condemn the barbaric attack on Israel, and I affirm Israel's right to defend itself. However, I will not be voting for House Resolution 771 today because, number one, it calls for sanctions on a sovereign country. Sanctions are a prelude to war and hurt the citizens of the country more than the government of the country that's being sanctioned. And ultimately, sanctions create laws that will be used to prosecute American citizens who engage in trade, not citizens of the sanctioned country. In short, sanctions do not achieve their stated purpose, but do breed resentment of our country abroad. Number two, Thomas Massey says why he's not supporting why he didn't support House Resolution 771. It asserts the necessity of foreign aid commitments, which I have voted against. Our country is going bankrupt, and we can't afford to borrow money to send overseas. Yet this resolution states that we should. I completely agree with number two. Listen, we fund Israel to the tune of billions of dollars a year. We already do. We've been doing it for decades, and I agree. Israel has every right to defend itself. I also think Israel can handle their own business. Their army is strong, and it just seems like it seems like we're going to find ourselves in another situation where we're just throwing money that we don't have at something that we probably don't need to be involved in. David in Clarksville, you have a comment on Israel funding. David, you're on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. What's up?
Hey, man, what's going on, man? I'm the first time calling your show, man. I'm glad to have you around. Anyway, man, I'm all down for the Israel funding. Of course, we're all against the Ukraine. It's been ridiculous, all that kind of stuff. But my biggest thing is, man, we're going to be funding all this stuff. We all know this is a religious war, and I'm not going to get off on that right there, to be honest with you. But it's just like it's hard to stand up for something when we don't stand up for nothing here. You know what I mean? So it's always going to bite us back. But really, man, to be honest, the thing I'm curious about the most is whatever happened in that Matt Murphy and Dan Mandis pickleball challenge. Man, did Matt Murphy did he back out again? Find another reason to wiggle out of it?
That is too controversial to talk about on my show.
That's what I'm more concerned about. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I'm going to abstain from all of that. I did hear a rumor that they played with some older ladies and were taken to task by them, and the pickleball enthusiasm seemed to fall off a cliff after that.
Right. Well, I'm team Dan all the way. So yeah.
All right, perfect. I'll let them know. Thanks for the call, man. I appreciate you.
Have a good one. Yeah.
Hey, thanks, man. You know, I listen, back to Israel. It is a religious war. There's no getting around that. If we get involved, we're opening ourselves up for just sending more money overseas, money that we don't have. We don't have. We talked earlier with this mass shooting in Maine about how many mental institutions have been closed in this country since the 70s. Hundreds and hundreds of them. We have a mental health crisis in this country. We have a crisis on fentanyl and drug addiction in all of our major cities. And it just doesn't get fixed. But we send money we don't have overseas to a country that may not even really need it. Now, if Israel found themselves in a position where it was either we need to step in or they cease to exist, yes, like step in. I don't feel like we're in that situation. Thomas Massey seems to feel that way too. And when he's explaining why he doesn't support House Resolution 771 that passed to help Israel in their battle against Hamas, the point I agree with the most was number two. It asserts the necessity of foreign aid commitments, which I have voted against. Our country is going bankrupt, and we can't afford to borrow money to send overseas. Yet this resolution states that we should. I mean, do you really think that we can afford another forever war in the Middle East? I hope it doesn't turn into a forever war, but can you expect anything less with the current leadership that we have in Washington? Can you? Thomas Massey goes on, he says, number three, it contains an open-ended promise of military support that is so broad that it could be interpreted to commit U.S. soldiers to the conflict. U.S. troops should not be engaged in this conflict, and that I 100% agree with as well. We should not be engaged with troops on the ground on this conflict. Richard in Smyrna, you have a comment on Israel. Richard, you're on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. What's up?
Thank you. How are y'all today?
Good, man. How are you?
Not real good. I forget the gentleman's name. I read this story early this morning. I was totally incensed. The U.S. ambassador was confirmed, our ambassador to Israel. Couldn't have been a worse choice. Anti-Semitic, and also he was Obama's man that actually got Iran on track to get their nuclear bomb because he dropped the sanctions, and then he also opened up, I forget what he did, but he opened up the point where they can convert their money into U.S. dollars through our banks. And he was confirmed with only one Republican voting for him, was Rand Paul, which totally angered me a little bit. But he said the reason he confirmed him was we need a U.S. ambassador on the ground with what's going on in Israel. That's not the reason. That shouldn't be a reason to do it. He should have been voted down. But totally bad track record. And, of course, like I said, he was the one that was Barack Obama's person who'd actually got the sanctions lifted against and got Iran on track. So I just want to make it, hope y'all can touch more on that subject.
Interesting. I'm going to look into it right now. I mean, I am seeing that the Senate committee advances Jack Lew's nomination to be U.S. ambassador to Israel. This is from NBC News. The Senate and Foreign Relations Committee has advanced Jack Lew's nomination to be the next U.S. ambassador to Israel. The Democrat-led panel reported the nomination out of the committee in a 12-9 vote yesterday, a week after Lew, who served as Treasury Secretary and White House Chief of Staff under Obama, testified before lawmakers at his confirmation hearing. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul was the only Republican in the committee who voted with the Democrat members to advance Lew's nomination. And, yeah, it seems like Republicans had expressed earlier this week that they were frustrated with the responses that Lew had to their follow-up questions after his hearing. But it doesn't appear that he has been confirmed yet. They're saying that the full Senate is expected to hold the confirmation vote on Lew's nomination next week at the earliest.
Okay. Well, I understood he had gotten it through, and they said they wanted to get him, they were getting him fast-tracked. So we need him on the ground now. We need this ambassador. And like you said, it could have been a worse, like I said, on the ground. I mean, what he's done to Israel and basically another one of these pro-Iranian people. I mean, it's a slap in the face to me, to them. But I mean, it's good to know. But I had understood that he had the vote gone through and he had been confirmed as fast-tracked. So if it's not, that's good news. If it's not been confirmed, I understood he had got the vote.
Yeah, this is a report from October. This is a report from yesterday morning that they will have a full confirmation. The full Senate vote is expected to be next week at the earliest.
Good. So,
because holding a vote this week would require an agreement among all 100 senators, which is unlikely because of GOP opposition to his nomination. So there is a chance that he doesn't get the nomination, that he doesn't get approved.
More come out about it. It's very, very troubling, the point of what he's basically given every aid to. And I said also the fact, I hope we could bring up something about, like I said, him allowing the Iranians to convert them, go through U.S. banks to get the money easier.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the Biden administration loves Iran. They'll do anything to help them out. So we'll keep our eyes on this story and update you as it unfolds. I appreciate the call.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Richard. Back to Thomas Massie. You know, do you agree with him voting against this resolution? I think his reasoning is sound. Open-ended promise of military support that is so broad that it could be interpreted to commit U.S. soldiers to the conflict. Would you want to commit U.S. soldiers to the conflict in Israel? 615-737-9986. I want to hear from you. Thomas Massie says it tends to broaden the conflict to other countries when it would be better to keep the war contained geographically, and I agree with. If anything could make the situation with Israel and Hamas get worse, it would be broadening the conflict. It would go from bad to worse quick. 615-737-9986. Your calls, your texts next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Crashes getting in the way. Briley Parkway westbound right before Averett Express. It's stop and go starting at Murfreesboro Pike. Then in Madison, you got 65 southbound right there just south of Old Hickory Boulevard. And in Rutherford County, you got a crash blocking the right shoulder 24 westbound in Laverne. The death toll has risen in the mass shooting in Maine. Hurricane Otis death toll rising. New developments in the Israel-Hamas war, with Israel saying they have gone into Gaza to prepare the battlefield. These stories and more coming up at 10:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Ken Weaver. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. We were talking about the House resolution bill that passed to support Israel. We've been talking about, I mentioned Jamal Bowman getting that sweetheart deal for pulling the fire alarm. I got a text from 3919. He said, "What would happen to me or you if we went to the Nashville airport and pulled the fire alarm?" It wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be good. Have you seen the videos of airports when they get evacuated? It's nightmare fuel. I saw one in Chicago. There was a storm. They evacuated O'Hare, and then thousands of people have to go back through security.
Oh, my gosh.
Nightmare fuel.
Ugh.
But on Israel and on funding them, is that something you want to be getting involved with? Do you feel like this is the move for us? I support Israel. I support their right to defend themselves. We already fund them to the tune of billions of dollars a year. But it seems like we're going to be funding them more. We're going to be sending more money. And according to Thomas Massey, this resolution that just passed could basically open the door for troops on the ground. Is that something that you're up for? JT texted and he said, "I'd rather my tax dollars go to Israel than Ukraine." I completely agree with that. 2, how about we wait and see if Israel needs our help and stay out of it until then? Yeah, I think that would be a good idea too. In fact, Israel said on numerous occasions that they're good. They're solid. He also says, "I would especially like my tax dollars closing our own border." Yeah. That would be nice. Closing our own border. And then he also puts in a point about how about we do something to undo the unintended consequences by Reagan when he began closing most mental institutions. Yeah. I think that our tax dollars could be put in a lot of better spots. 8521 says, "I'd be fine with giving them defensive weapons 100%, but cash money, not at all. You are 100% on the dot when you use the analogy, put our oxygen mask on first." I honestly, it is so hard for me to get on board with sending billions of dollars overseas to anyone, to anyone, when we are trillions of dollars in debt. Trillions of dollars in debt. How can you be excited about that? Kathy texted and he said, "It's really a lie that it's our tax dollars we're spending. It's money we're borrowing." Yep. It's the truth. Our tax dollars are barely covering the interest on our debt. 6740 said, "Chris, with no money going to any country from the U.S. Treasury, which is borrowed from China." Yep. We're borrowing money to fund wars while we're neck deep in debt. And neck deep might be a nice way of putting it. We're a lot more in debt than that. We do need to put our oxygen mask on first in this country, or we're going to find ourselves in a situation where we can't fix anything. We're going to have Weimar inflation. It just doesn't seem to be getting any better. 5829 said, "Use the $6.5 billion for Iran. Give it to Israel." Yeah, it seems like the Biden administration loves Iran. They love Iran. It's crazy, man. We do need to get our country under control. We need to get our spending under control. And it seems like we're heading in the right direction with Mike Johnson. There is another spending bill that Joe Biden is going to be requesting. $56 billion domestic spending request. $56 billion with a B. And it has a lot of things in there. I'll tell you about it right after Ken Weaver's news, which is going to happen right now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
10:30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Yeah, crashes in the way. Briley Parkway westbound right before Averett Express Drive. It's stop and go starting in Murfreesboro Pike. Got a rolling roadblock. The right 3 lanes are blocked. That's 65 southbound in Madison. And then right shoulder blocked. This is a crash 24 westbound in Laverne. Right now in the state of Maine, authorities just gave an update on the mass shooting investigation.
18 people are now deceased at this time.
As Colonel William Ross of Maine State Police, still no sign of the suspect, Robert Card, a 40-year-old firearms instructor with a military history and mental illness. No motive given. The death toll stands at 27 in Acapulco from Hurricane Otis, which hit as a Cat 5. Several people missing. Israel-Hamas war, not a full-scale incursion, but Israeli forces launched a limited ground raid into northern Gaza overnight for about an hour, reportedly striking several targets. The stated aim to, quote, prepare the battlefield ahead of a wider, larger ground invasion. That's the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. Which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here and here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you in a higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
The temperature's going up and down and up and down. You're kicking on your AC. You're kicking on your heat. Hey, it's Chris Hanford, Jeff Eddy's Efficient Heating and Cooling. If you're noticing your HVAC system is on the fritz, I got a guy for you to call, Jeff Eddy and his crew. I mean, it can be so hard to find somebody that you trust when it comes to fixing your HVAC. Are they selling you a bill of goods, or are they telling you the truth? Well, with Efficient HVAC, you can trust them to tell you the truth. They're a small company, But they have big service, and you know what's even better? They're honest. So if you're trying to make that decision to repair or replace your system, even if you had another guy come tell you that you got to replace it, call Jeff Eddy and his team for a second opinion, because the other guys, they may just pressure you to replace your system because, well, they make more money that way. Not with Jeff Eddy and his crew. They're looking for lifetime customers, and if it just means replacing a part, they'll tell you just replace a part. Plus, with Efficient, they offer up to 18 months, same as cash financing on your next unit. They're a diamond contractor with Mitsubishi Electric and an Elite Pro partner with Rheem. Go to efficienthvac.net or call 615-784-4424. It's not 8:35. It's 10:35 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand. I'm broadcasting live from Phoenix right now, so I find myself in this habit of looking at the clock right before I start the break, and it's been throwing me off all morning.
Chris, if it was 8:35, I wouldn't be here, man. Come on.
Again, yeah, you're right. If it was 8:35 or a Monday or a Friday, Mac wouldn't be here. Wasn't somebody harassing you in the chat saying that?
Yeah, there was a stream asking who was here, Mason or Mac or whatever, and they were like, I'm pretty sure it's Mac. Mac's only gone on Mondays and Fridays, so he should be there.
Checks out. That's hilarious. I love that's become a running joke, but Mac actually does work hard, you guys.
I promise.
I give him grief, but I love that it's become the running joke that he doesn't do anything.
It's a good bit.
That's so funny. Also funny. Kind of a bit. The Biden administration doesn't do anything, but they're trying to do something. They unveiled Wednesday a $56 billion domestic spending request that would funnel billions of dollars into disaster response, child care, national security, aid for lower income Americans, and other programs. $56 billion. Now, there's a tweet that Charlie Kirk put out, which I thought was so smart. He said it was his advice for Speaker Johnson, and one part of his tweet really stuck out to me. He said, "What you need to do." Here, I'll read the exact tweet. What we need to do is go through these bills. Start with the least controversial, and then work your way towards stickier issues, and follow through so that way the left can't accuse Republicans of holding Social Security or veterans hostage as part of our negotiations on Ukraine or the border. And this bill that the president is sending to Congress, I think, is the perfect place to start. So it's a $56 billion domestic spending request. Okay, so what is in this bill? He wants $23.5 billion for disaster response. So in that $23.5 billion, $9 billion for the disaster relief fund for FEMA. It would also pump $2.8 billion into addressing housing and infrastructure needs caused by major disasters. $1 billion to repair schools, highways. This is where I think we need to start. You send us a $56 billion domestic spending request. It's like, nope, send it back one bill at a time. Send me the $23.5 billion bill for disaster response, because that's non-controversial. We can all agree that FEMA probably needs some money. We can all agree for money to repair schools, federal highways, roads affected by disasters, and more. That's easy stuff. We can all agree on that. So start by separating this $56 billion domestic spending request into separate bills. You want $23.5 billion for disaster response? I feel like the majority of Americans could get behind it. I feel like they could. Also in this $56 billion spending request, $16 billion for childcare. $16 billion for childcare. The proposal would funnel $16 billion into childcare stabilization grants to extend the pandemic support program for another year to help keep providers open. Congressional Democrats created a $24 billion child care stabilization program as part of the American Rescue Plan Act in 2021, but the funding expired on September 30th. More than 70,000 child care programs are projected to close, and about 3.2 million children could lose their spots due to the loss of federal assistance. This is according to analysis by the Century Foundation. This is where it starts getting stickier. I don't think the government should subsidize childcare. I feel like anything the government gets involved with, it gets more expensive. Childcare costs are insane. Insane. We can all agree on that. I have 4 kids. I have looked at childcare. I have done childcare. It is expensive. It's gotten more expensive as the government gets more involved. Forbes wrote an article on this back in 2016. 2016. So things have only gotten more expensive since then. But listen to what they said in 2016. They said 2 problems are standing between the advocates for more government involvement in paying for childcare and a solution to the problem of expensive childcare. First, when government provides payments for anything, the cost of that good or service always rises. Studies have shown, for example, that increased federal financial aid for college has led to steep increases to the point where colleges benefit more from financial aid than the students that are supposedly being helped. This is simply basic economics. The price of a good or service is set by the intersection of supply and demand. Demand represents the different quantities of that good or service that people are willing and able to buy at specified prices, right? When the government provides money to subsidize something like a student loan or a child tax credit, people are suddenly willing and able to pay more for the object of the subsidy. Thus, the demand is stronger and the price of the good rises. It happens every single time. And as long as supply and demand are both somewhat responsive to price changes, the price of the government subsidized good or service will rise by somewhat less than the amount of the subsidy, meaning that the subsidy is split between the buyer and the seller. So in simple terms, while the government makes childcare less expensive to parents after accounting for the subsidy, it also drives up the price. This does 3 things. It means that parents gain less than the amount of the subsidy, then the childcare providers are enriched by some share of the subsidy, and that non-subsidized parents lose because of the higher price. And it's going to come out of the pockets of the middle class. I think that we need to rip the Band-Aid off of childcare. It's probably an unpopular opinion. It's probably going to be uncomfortable. But I don't think that, we're talking about how much debt we're in. Subsidizing childcare more, it's only going to make it more expensive. Childcare has been raising like double the rate of inflation for decades. So you want $16 billion more for childcare? Like, it sounds good until next time when you need $32 billion for childcare. I'm not with it. And I think that's a fight that Mike Johnson and House Republicans need to have. They need to dig in and get in the weeds on that one. Also, in this $56 billion domestic spending request from the Biden White House, he's asking for $6 billion for affordable connectivity. The White House wants to extend free and discounted high-speed internet through the Affordable Connectivity Program for tens of millions of low-income households through December 2024. I'm against it. We are in so much debt, and there are places where you can access free public internet. So why are we going to extend free and discounted high-speed internet through the Affordable Connectivity Program? I'm sorry, not with it. I don't feel like that's the best use of money. I don't. $6 billion also in the plan for national security and energy independence. The measure would provide $3.1 billion to reimburse communications providers for the ongoing removal of insecure equipment and software from the U.S. communications infrastructure. It would funnel $2.2 billion into improving long-term domestic enrichment capabilities for certain types of uranium, and it would provide $300 million for capital improvements for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, as well as $278 million to mitigate vulnerabilities and enhance U.S. competitiveness in the global market for isotopes. It would also provide $200 million for grants to nonprofit organizations at high risk of attack, including synagogues, mosques, to strengthen the security of their facilities. I just feel like this one could probably be split up. You want $3.1 billion, like just line item by line item, like single thoughts. You want $3.1 billion to reimburse communications providers for the ongoing removal of this insecure equipment and software. I'm cool with that. $2.2 billion to improve long-term domestic enrichment capabilities for uranium. Okay. But then you get into the weeds, and I feel like we need to really get into the line items on how this money is being spent. It sounds good, providing $200 million in grants for nonprofit organizations at high risk of attack. But what does that mean long term, and where does that land us in the future? They also put in this bill $1.6 billion for energy assistance. The House wants to beef up low-income home energy assistance program to help more Americans pay for home heating amid high energy costs. Both the House and Senate have proposed allocating about $4 billion for the safety net program for this fiscal year. Lawmakers had provided $6 billion for the prior fiscal year and about $8.4 billion in fiscal year 2022 as energy prices skyrocketed. Now, while I'm against the $6 billion to provide high-speed internet to low-income households, I'm totally fine with helping people pay for heat. Like that, I feel like that is a need. Internet is a want, and we need to be very specific about how we're spending money. If there's families out there with kids that can't pay for their heat bill, I'm okay with the social safety net helping them out. I don't think there's many people that are going to be against that. But high-speed internet, I don't get it. I don't get it. Doesn't make any sense. 8635 says the internet's to spread propaganda. Oh, maybe that's it. That makes a little bit more sense than where I was going.
Bingo.
Thank you. 7516 texting said our country is being looted on more than one level, and I think you're absolutely right. 7516. I think that's why it's important that these bloated bills need to be like boiled down into what you're actually asking for, and we need to do single spending bills. One thought per break. They're asking for $1.5 billion to combat the fentanyl crisis. The package contains more money for state opioid response grants to provide treatment, harm reduction, and recovery support services. I feel like if we just close down the border, could we use $1.5 billion to close down the border instead of combating the fentanyl crisis? Plus, what do they exactly mean by grants to provide treatment, harm reduction, and recovery support services? Are we just going to be sending Narcan into every big city? You need to tell me what this means. And this is why we need healthy debate on the House floor, and why I'm excited for Mike Johnson to be in there, because I feel like we're going to get that kind of debate. But to jam all of this in, a $1.5 billion ask for fentanyl, also at the same time $6 billion for internet, also at the same time $16 billion for childcare. It's like these things shouldn't be going together. They shouldn't. There's stuff in this that I'm sure the majority of Americans could get behind. But there's some stuff in here. It's like, why are we spending this here? $1.5 billion to combat fentanyl. Sounds like a border issue. Maybe if we had decent border security, we wouldn't need $1.5 billion to combat the fentanyl crisis. They also put in here $220 million for wildland firefighter pay. The package would prevent cuts to federal wildland firefighter salaries. This is one of those things like, yes, I feel like we could pass that right away. And that's why I go back to that tweet from Charlie Kirk where he says, let's announce that the House will be passing separate spending bills instead of the same bloated continuing resolutions. Start with least controversial and work your way towards the stickier issues. Like $220 million for wildland firefighter pay, that's easy. I feel like a lot of people would get behind that. But $6 billion for internet for low-income households, and it's only $6 billion through December of 2024. You need $6 billion for a year and 2 months? Nah, I don't know. It doesn't sound right. Something off. Something a little bit off about that. I think all of this stuff, like these bloated bills that nobody can read, nobody can get through, need to stop. And I hope that Mike Johnson does something about it. Because there's certainly things in this thing that Joe Biden is sending to the House floor in his $56 billion domestic spending request that makes sense. Again, wildland firefighter pay, cool. Heat for low-income households, I can get behind that. I don't want anybody to be freezing out. But I think heat is a lot different than internet. Does that make sense? Also in this is $1.05 billion for international food assistance. International food assistance? I thought this was a domestic spending request. And this is what they do. They sneak this stuff in. $1.5 billion for international food assistance. The White House is asking for $1 billion for food for peace grants that respond to global emergency needs using food grown by U.S. farmers, as well as $5 million for the McGovern-Dole Food for Education program to support school feeding and maternal and child nutrition projects globally. Is it really a domestic spending request if we're talking about global? And maybe if they broke it down and they explain it and how it helps our farmers, maybe there is good in this $1 billion for international food assistance. But when you're coupling it, international food assistance with a fentanyl crisis, with wildland firefighter pay, this is too bloated. It's too confusing. Give me one bill, please. Just one. One spending request, one thought per break. Because otherwise, it's like, what are we talking about? Oh, you don't support firefighters if you don't support this domestic spending bill. I do. You want people to freeze in the winter. Like this is what they'll do. They'll use emotional arguments. It's like, well, I just kind of don't really like internet for low-income households when internet is pretty prevalent and you can get a lot of places, including your public library. But $6 billion for a year for internet for low-income households, $1 billion for international food assistance, international, $220 million for it. Just all these things in one bill. Make it stop. Make the insanity stop. It is 10:51 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. My name is Chris Hand, and this is The Chris Hand Show.
Hey everybody, Dan Mattis with Nashville's Morning News on WTN. I'm here at the Nashville Rescue Mission doing the interviews that I look forward to doing every single year. These are incredible stories of people who have had amazing recoveries. Thanks to this amazing facility, they are able to get clean and lead a more productive life. The date of our annual radiothon is going to be Monday, November 20th. Listen in and please donate. You can get more information at 99.7 WTN, including a link to the website for Nashville's Rescue Mission.
Got a rolling roadblock causing problems in traffic in Madison. You've got the right 3 lanes blocked, 65 southbound right before Briley Parkway. We've got new developments in the investigation of that Maine mass shooting last night. They've updated the death toll. They've updated the death toll for Hurricane Otis that hit Mexico. And there's new developments in the Israel-Hamas war we'll tell you about. Coming up at 11 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Thank you, Ken Weaver. That hurricane in Mexico was crazy. I mean, it turned from like a tropical storm, which everybody was expecting, to like a Cat 5 heading towards landfall. Like, that's nuts. Nobody had any time. I'm looking forward to that in the newscast. Also, I'm getting texts. Somebody, 9521 text, he said, have I been blocked on the text line? I'm a liberal, but I listen every time I'm in the car. Not trying to talk smack. I promise you, 9521, you're not blocked for being a liberal. It's okay. 9521 also had a comment. We were talking about paying for internet in this domestic spending bill for low-income households. He said, you need internet to apply for jobs at McDonald's and Taco Bell, not to mention online remote work for rural people. That's why internet is necessary. Still don't want to pay for it. I promise I still don't want to pay for it. Plus, everybody's got internet on their phone, and you can go to McDonald's and use the Wi-Fi for free while you apply for a job there. It's 9 o'clock on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Ken Weaver's got the latest headlines for you right now on Super Talk.
Eleven o'clock on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast in 2 minutes. And right now in the state of Maine.
In Maine, the frantic search continues for the suspect in the gunman and Robert Card following last night's mass shooting in Lewiston at 2 separate locations. Governor Janet Mills at a briefing says the death toll has risen.
I'm profoundly saddened to stand before you today to report that 18 people lost their lives.
More than a dozen others were injured. Police say the shooting began at a bowling alley during Children's League last night. Then the gunman went to a bar about 4 miles away and opened fire. Colonel William Roth says they've issued an arrest warrant.
Currently, there is an arrest warrant for 8 counts of murder for Mr. Card. And the reason it's 8 counts because 10 people have not yet been identified.
The Army confirms Card was a reservist from 2000 to 2008, and police say he also has mental health issues. President Biden, in a statement, says once again the nation is mourning after a senseless mass shooting and urged Congress to pass gun reform legislation.
That's Michelle Franzen reporting. Well, the death toll stands at 27 in Acapulco from Hurricane Otis, which hit as a Category 5 hurricane. It was expected to make landfall as maybe a Cat 1 storm, but it turned and rapidly. Several people are missing in addition to the 27 dead. Otis goes on record as the strongest storm to hit Mexico's coast. Israel-Hamas war, Tom Rivers says it was not a full-scale incursion, but Israeli forces launched raids overnight in Gaza.
Israeli troops and tanks went in for roughly an hour, reportedly striking several targets. The stated aim, to, quote, prepare the battlefield ahead of a wider, larger ground invasion after applying now more than 2 weeks of devastating air attacks. This limited raid came after the UN warned it's on the verge of running out of fuel in the Gaza Strip, forcing it to sharply curtail relief efforts in the territory.
That is the latest news. Weather's next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
I love the state of Tennessee. I love everything about it, and I love hunting and fishing in the state of Tennessee, and what you guys do is so great. I was born and raised here, and this song is for Tennessee and everybody in it. Well, I have roamed across the land, and I have sailed deepest sea. When I've drawn my last breath, do this one thing for me. Say, won't you take me back to Tennessee, where southern streams are flowing free. Me and mine, Lord, will always be right at home in Tennessee. Right at home in the woods of Tennessee. Right at home in Tennessee.
Awesome.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, 11:05. My name is Chris Hand. Apparently, I shanked the time again going into the news. I'm broadcasting live from Phoenix, Arizona, where we have a 2-hour time difference. So I have no idea what time it is, to be perfectly honest with you. I hate time zones. They are the worst. I have no idea what time it is. So just look at the clock in your car. If I say the wrong time, just fact check me. But I am in Phoenix, hanging out at the Turning Point USA studios. They were kind enough to let me use their studios while I'm down here. My friends here were happy to help me out, and I'm absolutely grateful to them. There's a ton of great people at Turning Point USA. Phoenix is a fun city. If you haven't heard of America Fest, which is happening in December, I'm going to be coming back to broadcast live at America Fest. It's December 16th through 19th. America Fest is basically like Alex Clark, she does a show with Turning Point. She does politics. She calls it the Coachella for conservatives. But America Fest is going to be wild. It's 4 days, December 16th through 19th. They have some of the best speakers in the country. Charlie Kirk will obviously be there. This year, they're also going to have Tucker Carlson, U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, Dennis Prager, Jack Hibbs, Riley Gaines, James Lindsay. More to be announced. It's going to be fantastic. And if you're interested in going to America Fest, you just go to, I think it's amfest.com. It's amfest.com, amfest.com. And you can use the promo code HAND25, HAND25 to get 25% off tickets. These guys are the best. They let me borrow a studio. They let me have a promo code. They're good people over at Turning Point USA. And if you've never been to one of their events, I highly recommend it. There's honestly nothing like it. Somebody that won't be at America Fest would be President Joe Biden. He was at the White House yesterday. He was giving a speech, kind of taking questions with the Australian Prime Minister. Joe was just crushing it. He was crushing it. He at one point he thanked Israel, and then he also thanked Palestinians. This is our president, our resident in chief, Joe Biden. You got me, Mac? Yep.
I want to thank the Israelis and the Palestinian, and President Sisi of Egypt.
Can't thank the Palestinians. Don't do that. Then at one point a reporter asked him about the hostages in Gaza, and Joe just completely displays his signs of dementia and gets angry. And then it was like this totally reminded me of like a parent yelling at a coach at a child sports game and like, put him in, coach. What are you doing? You want to coach? This is Joe Biden dealing with a reporter who just asked him a simple question about hostages.
But aren't these hostages in jeopardy if there is a ground invasion?
You want to make a speech? No, look, obviously they're in jeopardy. The question is whether or not there's any way of getting them out. If we can get them out, we should get them out.
Oh, okay. But if we should get them out, we should get them out. But doesn't he sound like I remember this at sports games so vividly as a kid. The coach would look at some parent yelling, be like, "Do you want to coach?" Or the referee would look at somebody.
Oh, yeah.
"Do you want a ref? You want to be the ref? Come on down. You can be the ref." And, hand him a whistle. Like, "Do you want to make a speech?"
So sassy.
How dare you ask a question that people in America want an answer to?
How dare you do your job?
Joe's been the president here for a couple years. You know he doesn't answer questions. You know that. He also goes on to talk about how, guys, this is nothing new. We've had troops in the Middle East since 9/11.
We have had troops in the region since 9/11 to go after ISIS and prevent its reemergence in both, anyway, in the region, having nothing to do with Israel at all. My warning to the Ayatollah was that if they continue to move against those troops, we will respond, and he should be prepared. It has nothing to do with Israel.
No, don't worry. It has nothing to do with Israel. Joe Biden threatening to go full Lindsey Graham. Also, the troops in the Middle East since 9/11 to go after ISIS. ISIS is relatively new. And I do agree. We've had troops in the Middle East since 9/11. I guess that's one of the reasons why I don't want to go over to the Middle East for more war, because since 9/11, what has America gained from having troops over in the Middle East? I'll wait. Not everybody all at once. Yeah, seriously. What have we gained? What have we gained? Foreign wars and trillions of dollars in debt. Millions dead, displaced. It's just crazy. He also goes on to say,
but Chris, he's pretty confident about it. I mean, come on.
It's reemergence in both, anyway, in the region.
Anyway. Whoa, anyway. We're reassured by the reemergence. Anyway. But he also says Hamas does not represent God. Hamas does not represent the Palestinians.
We also have to remember that Hamas does not represent, let me say it again, Hamas does not represent the vast majority of the Palestinian people on the Gaza Strip or anywhere else.
Yeah, I think that's probably the truth. Now, I do hear the comments when people are like, well, the Palestinians voted for Hamas. And I've been like struggling with this thought because for me, at least when I talk to conservatives out on the street, one thing that people always say is that the 2020 election was rigged. The election was stolen. That's like, it's a prominent talking point in conservative circles, that the election was stolen from President Trump. Now, whichever way you believe it, there are a lot of people that do. Okay, so that's a prominent conservative talking point. Also, a prominent conservative talking point right now is the Palestinians voted for Hamas. So, but you said over here that in our first world country, which is, I mean, at this point, America is just a bougie third world country. In our bougie third world country, an election was stolen. But in an actual third world country, the Palestinians voted for Hamas. I don't know. It's just an observation I've made. It just seems to contradict the regular talking points. And again, I'm not trying to say that Hamas is going to be dealt with by Israel, and Israel has every right. I don't like this conflict at all. And then Biden goes on to tell everyone that he starts talking about the Hamas attack, and he says, I'm convinced about something, but he also says that he has no proof. So he's convinced with no proof.
I'm convinced one of the reasons Hamas attacked when they did, and I have no proof of this, as my instinct tells me, is because of the progress we were making towards regional integration for Israel and regional integration overall. and we can't leave that work behind. And one more word on this. I continue to be alarmed about extremist settlers attacking Palestinians in the West Bank.
I'm convinced with no proof. Convinced with no proof. Kevin in Nashville, you're on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. What's up, Kevin?
Okay, I had two things. If let's just say the elections were rigged over there, but shouldn't they see the IDF as liberators then? If the elections were rigged, because these are the ones coming to get the terrorists off your back. But you see no Palestinians, not one, ever protesting anything that Hamas or Hezbollah ever does. Not in the past and not in the present. You don't see it. So I don't know. I think the sympathy kind of is, well, those dirty Jews, get rid of them, however it has to be, but don't pound us.
Oh no, I totally listen. I think that for the most part, you do have overwhelming support for Hamas in that area. I just was pointing out the funny aspect of the fact that a big talking point is Trump had the election stolen, and then also a big talking point is well, the Palestinians voted for Hamas. Like there could be no wiggle room in there.
Okay.
But that being.
Let me switch gears on you one more time. I got something else. Joe Biden was only talking about the $6 billion they released. He's not talking about the billions they made by him not enforcing the Trump-era sanctions on Iran. And then Iran throws their oil on the market, and he took ours off.
Yep.
He helped them to the tune of several billion dollars more. And I'm hearing estimates somewhere into the tune of about $70 billion more than just that $6 billion. My question is, whose side is this guy on?
Oh yeah, and then look at his Rob Malley. It was basically an Iranian spy working in his administration. You can go back to the Obama administration. I mean, even just simple economics. When he stopped all the drilling in America, the price of a barrel of oil went up because it's all done through speculation, right? So
right.
We speculated there would be less oil available. Price of oil goes up. So now Iran, instead of selling oil at $50-something a barrel, they're selling it at $80-something a barrel. So just the choices you make are enriching these nations.
Exactly. And then on top of that, our SPR is still at some of the lowest levels it's ever been. He even had a window in there where he could have replaced that oil at a cheaper price, and he didn't do it.
No, he didn't do it. And his energy secretary basically talked to China before she sold all of it.
That makes it even worse. Once again, I asked the same question. Whose side is he on?
It's so crazy. Jennifer Granholm, I'll pull up the story. She basically talked with China before selling that petroleum reserve. It's a crazy story. She's not a good person. The entire regime is they don't have our best interests at heart. It's wild. It's absolutely wild.
Exactly. And like I said, I keep asking the question. Either that you're helping them or you're galactically stupid.
Yeah. Well, I stopped believing a long time ago that these Democrats are making the wrong decisions with the right intentions. I think they're making the wrong decisions on purpose.
There you go. I agree.
Yep. And yes, so Energy Secretary Granholm, she praises China left and right. She basically told them that they were opening the petroleum reserve beforehand. I'm going to find that story for you. Thanks for the call, man. Really appreciate you. Frank in Thompson Station, you're on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. What's up, Frank?
Yes, they're talking about Hamas not representing Palestinians and
Yes, sir.
the stolen election, stuff like that. Well, no matter whether we like it or not, Biden still represents us. When he goes someplace, he represents us, whether I agree with him or not. And I don't like the idea that he represents us, but he does. And so, yes, Hamas represents the Palestinian people.
Yeah, no, I mean, I listen, that's who's in charge over there. There's no debating it. There's no debating it. That's who's in charge over there.
Yes.
Hey, thanks for the call, man. Really appreciate you. That story on Jennifer Granholm, just for those who are keeping score at home, New York Post reported that she, called Chinese officials before she tapped the U.S. Oil reserves. She had a half-hour conversation on November 21st. Government schedules obtained by watchdog groups for Public Trust Now, and it shows that she was making these calls right before Biden announced the release of 50 million barrels from oil from the reserve in an effort to bring down gas prices. That was the largest ever energy stockpile sale in U.S. history. And Jennifer Granholm, our energy secretary, was on the phone with China talking to them beforehand. She said she brought together other nations to contribute to the issue. Unbelievable. It does seem like this administration is actively trying to sabotage the nation, doesn't it? Certainly seems that way to me. We have more from China, including Biden changing some details in his story about the boys' trip with President Xi Jinping. We'll play those for you next on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
We'll update the manhunt in Maine, the updated death toll there. Also, President Biden taking credit for the better-than-expected economic report today. That's coming up at 11:30 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
Classic Biden, taking credit and giving blame.
That's right, Jack.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, 924. Jeez Louise, I'm doing this all day. 11:24. This is what happens when you're broadcasting from Phoenix, Arizona. It's Chris and I am live in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm broadcasting from the Turning Point USA studios. They were kind enough to lend me their studio, and I can't get the time right at all. I'm so backwards on the time right now. I feel like Joe Biden. I just can't get it straight. I have no idea what's going on. I don't know what time it is. I'm going to stop telling the time. Biden, he had that joint press conference with the Australian Prime Minister yesterday. And he brought up, once again, his boys' trip with Xi Jinping across the Tibetan Plateau.
But the fact is that I have met with Xi Jinping more than any other world leader has. I've had over 68 hours of private meetings, he and I, with simultaneous interpreters, starting back when I was vice president, because it wasn't appropriate for a president of the United States to be meeting with the vice president. So I traveled 17,000 miles with him. And I've subsequently, in addition to that 68 hours, I've also had another, they tell me they keep meticulous contact, another, I think, 12, 15 hours of discussions, just he and I.
Wow. I thought there was only one interpreter the first time he told that story. Now there's simultaneous interpreters.
Yeah, there's several.
There's just me and him and two interpreters and a note keeper and a driver.
And a stenographer.
And Xi's driver, because we took separate cars. It was, it's just ridiculous. This Xi Jinping story. Did you find it weird that he's like, oh, it started back when I was vice president and he was vice president? It feels like he's planting seeds for Chinese money that may come to light. Like, no, I talked with him back then because I had to. I was vice president. Because there is more coming out about Joe Biden. This one's pretty crazy. There's a story that the FBI received criminal information from 40 confidential sources related to the Bidens. Fox News has this story. It's wild. So the FBI, and they didn't act on any of this, believe it or not. Weird how that always happens. They received criminal information from over 40 confidential sources on Joe Biden, Hunter, and James Biden. This is according to Grassley. He's alleging that the FBI and the DOJ shut these investigations into the Bidens down. I know, shocking, right? The FBI shutting down an investigation into Joe Biden? That could never happen, right? Well, the FBI maintained more than 40 confidential human sources on various criminal matters related to the Biden family, including Joe, dating back to his time as vice president, according to information obtained by Senator Chuck Grassley, obviously from Iowa. The confidential human sources provided criminal information to the FBI relating to Joe, James, and Hunter. Those confidential human sources were managed by multiple FBI field offices across the nation, including the FBI's Seattle field office. Grassley learned that the FBI task force with the Washington field office in some cases successfully shut down reporting and information from these sources by falsely discrediting them as foreign disinformation. Where have you heard that before? It's foreign disinformation. Oh, that's right, the laptop when 51 former senior intelligence officials called it foreign disinformation, Russian disinformation. But the effort done by the Washington field office FBI caused investigative activity to cease from these over 40 confidential sources. Now, however, despite the efforts by the FBI task force, Grassley said in at least one instance, a confidential human source and its information had been vetted by multiple U.S. Attorney's Office, which found no hits to known sources of Russian disinformation. So it's been verified by other U.S. offices and U.S. Attorney's Office. Now, these revelations were laid out in a letter Grassley wrote to Attorney General Merrick Garland and FBI Director Christopher Wray late Tuesday night. The letter was exclusively obtained by Fox News Digital, and in the letter it says, based on the information provided to my officer over a period of years by multiple credible whistleblowers, there appears to be an effort within the Justice Department and FBI to shut down investigative activity relating to the Biden family. That's what Grassley wrote to Garland and Wray. So decisions point to significant political bias infecting the decision-making of not only the Attorney General and FBI Director, but also line agents and prosecutors. He added, our republic cannot survive such a political infection, and you have an obligation to this country to clear the air. They do have an obligation, and I think that we do need to get to the bottom of this. I have more from this Chuck Grassley story. We're going to dig in more to the presidential race for 2024, including another Democrat rubbing elbows with the Chinese. And we'll do that after Ken Weaver's newscast, which happens right now on Super Talk 99.7 WTN.
.30 on the dot. I'm Ken Weaver with your top stories. Full forecast in 2 minutes. The death toll in Maine is 18. 13 injured from last night's mass shooting. Authorities still searching for the man they say did it. 40-year-old Robert Card, a firearms instructor with military history. Here's Mike Soschuk, the commissioner for Department of Public Safety in Maine, when asked about reports of mental health issues linked to the suspect.
You're talking about behavioral health issues and how that impacts this situation. I would expect you'll hear back from us on that in the future.
A shelter-in-place order in effect in Lewiston and 2 surrounding communities in Maine. Cleaning up in Acapulco after a battering by Hurricane Otis, which quickly turned into a Cat 5 from a Cat 1 storm. 27 dead, several still missing. And the latest Bureau of Economic Analysis report shows the U.S. economy grew at a hot pace over the 3 months ending in September, 4.9%, more than doubling growth in the previous quarter and exceeding economists' expectations. That's the latest news. Weather is next. I'm Ken Weaver, WTN News.
A Roth IRA versus a traditional IRA. Which one should we do? A lot of people struggle over this particular decision. And I'll just give you a couple tools to figure out what might be better for you. Think about it this way. Let's say if I had $1,000 that I was thinking about investing, that was income, $1,000 of income. With an IRA, let's say that you're in a 30% tax bracket. Let's say there is such a thing. And you want to put this money in an IRA. You're going to save $300 in taxes. Now, if you go post-tax with like a Roth IRA, this is how much goes into the Roth IRA. Now, let's say that later on down the road, we have this money and it didn't grow at all, just to keep the math really simple. And let's say that at some point in the future, you're in a lower tax bracket, because the way our tax system works is that your first income is taxed at a really low rate, and then you get up into higher rates, 10%, 12%, 22%, and so on and so forth. It gets higher. If you're earning income and you're at that particular tax rate up there, you might want to avoid that tax rate right now and take the income at a later point in time when you're in a lower average tax rate. Now let's say that you're in a 10% bracket down here when you pull the money. How much are you going to pay in taxes? 10% of $1,000 is $100. How much do you get to spend? $900. Well, even though I didn't have growth, I had growth because of the difference between my tax rate here and here. And that's the idea. That's one of the things that we look at. We look at Social Security taxation, income taxation, and a lot of factors that might drive you in a higher or lower brackets in the future. If you want to learn more about our approach to investing and financial planning, go to paulwinkler.com and set up a free 15-minute phone call or call 615-851-1950.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN, Chris Hand, broadcasting live from Phoenix, Arizona. I have no idea what time it is. The time changes really mess with me today. It's
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everybody. I'm live in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm at the Turning Point USA studios. My friends here have let me commandeer their studio, and I'm so grateful for that. Thank you to them. We're talking about Joe Biden. You know, the FBI covering for him again. We just found out via Chuck Grassley that the FBI had received criminal information from over 40 confidential sources on Joe Biden, Hunter, and James Biden. Weird. Now, Grassley wrote a letter to Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray, and he says he's not happy about this. He said an essential question must be answered. Did the FBI investigate this information, or did it shut it down? Noting that if those sources were improperly shut down, it wouldn't be out of the ordinary for the FBI. Nope, it wouldn't be. It wouldn't be out of the ordinary at all. It just seems like the FBI doing FBI things. It's crazy, man. But now that we have a good Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who was very in favor of impeachment inquiry, maybe we do start to see more coming out of about this stuff. Maybe we do see a more aggressive investigation into the Biden crime family. We can hope. We can hope, right? I think that we do need an aggressive investigation. I think it's time. I do. You know, because the Dems are very aggressive. We need to be just as aggressive, especially as we move towards 2024. Luckily, some Republicans are being pretty aggressive. Politico has a story on North Carolina's new GOP gerrymander that could flip 4 House seats. I like this. Republicans are likely to pick up at least 3 seats, bolstering their thin House majority, reports Politico. Republicans have pushed through an aggressive gerrymander of North Carolina's congressional map that will help them flip several seats in Congress. Those looming GOP pickups will bolster the party's chances of defending their narrow House majority next year by erasing or even surpassing Republican losses elsewhere in the South. Oh, and then this is where the propaganda comes in, where courts have begun tossing out congressional lines for diluting the power of black voters. Yeah, that's what it's about. North Carolina's new map, which was approved Wednesday by the state legislature, is particularly efficient at securing a GOP advantage in a state that's closely divided for many statewide races, setting off a scramble among Republicans for the opportunity to run in the newly safe seats. And I want to see this in more states. We have every opportunity to do this, every legal pathway to do this, and I think it's awesome. I mean, if you look at North Carolina's voting map, it's like Raleigh, Greensboro, Charlotte, all blue. It's basically it reminds me a lot of Tennessee in the Knoxville, Memphis, Nashville being the blue islands. You got Charlotte, you got Raleigh, and it looks like Greensboro, all blue. But in their new map, we could be picking up 4 more seats, up to 4 more seats for the GOP. They say that the Republicans' new lines obliterate 3 Democrat districts, all but guaranteeing that Rep. Kathy Manning and first-term Democrats Wiley Nickel and Jeff Jackson won't return. And to that, I say good. Good. We need to be aggressive. We need to get on offense, and good on North Carolina for doing that. You know, when Trump takes a stand and Trump goes on offense, he gets fined. Did you hear about this? Trump was fined by that New York judge for violating his gag order. $10,000. I would go violate it again. He's got the money. But we see the Democrats going on offense, going after the president every step of the way. I mean, we see the Democrats going on offense today after the mass shooting in Maine last night for gun legislation. And we're going to see that narrative crafted. All the Democrats do is go on offense. So when I see somebody like in North Carolina, they're going on offense to gain seats in the House, I say, awesome. Let's do it. We need that kind of energy going into 2024. We really do. DeSantis also feels like he needs a little bit more energy going into 2024, and he has ramped up his attacks on Donald Trump. I don't know if that's the move. DeSantis said that Trump has lost the zip on his fastball and has a sense of entitlement. And he accused him of being unable to get off a teleprompter. He said he's wedded to the teleprompter. He can't get off that teleprompter. Anytime he does, he says things like, don't vote. He's telling people not to vote, DeSantis said, adding that Trump lost the popular vote to twice failed presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, arguing that you don't have all the votes you need. DeSantis, what's he polling at? He's polling in single digits, and he's still swinging at Donald Trump. DeSantis's campaign was done at basically the moment it took off. He should have just waited till 2028. He really should have. I feel like he sabotaged his own political career. And he says Trump has a sense of entitlement. I don't know, man. But it does seem more and more like 2024 could be going in our favor. You know, you see Hispanic voters trending Republican. You see African-American voters trending Republican. You see, I mean, the effects of the Joe Biden administration are hitting those communities first. And now, Breitbart.com has a story, liberal secular Jews are growing disillusioned with the left. This is one of the things about the Democrat umbrella. They have so many competing ideologies under one umbrella that they're not going to all get along. How are liberal secular Jews going to be able to rectify, the fact that Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib are in the Democrat Party? The Times of London, the New York Times tablet, and the Free Press have all, in the past week, featured pieces detailing how secular Jews in the West, generational liberals who are always supportive of myriad social justice causes championed by progressives, are shocked and repulsed by their political allies' dismissal of the violence inflicted on the families in Israel by the Hamas terrorists. Western secular Jews have long been left-wing. Their culture is socially liberal, humanist, intellectual, generous, communal, which has always led them into arms of various left-wing parties where in the countries where they live. They've historically played key roles in the civil rights movement, have been some of the most prominent voices for civil liberties, and more recently have, by and large, been supportive of the left-wing social movements. But after October 7th, as every Jew went through the collective loss, grief, and mourning, Jews watched virtually every left-wing institution personally either dismiss or justify the atrocities performed by Hamas. And they're taking note. They're taking note. American Jews watched Black Lives Matter release statements in support of Hamas. I mean, the Chicago chapter literally posted a graphic of the paraglider saying, "We stand with Hamas." Or what they said Palestine, but it was a paraglider. They're watching Democrat officials chanting "From the river to the sea." They're watching them pledge solidarity with the resistance of 57 years of colonialism and apartheid. I mean, American Jews are seeing all of this. They're seeing the A-list celebrities bemoan that what's happening in Gaza is wrong and effectively carrying water for Hamas. They're seeing the rise in anti-Semitism, and then they're seeing Karine Jean-Pierre be asked about it and say, well, Islamophobia is really on the rise. It's not shocking that most of these groups are starting to look around and go, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? The Democrat Party, they'll act like they love you, but they really only love power. Breitbart.com continues, and now Jews are looking at the people they always stood with and realizing in their moment of tragedy they are alone. Because Gaza is a bad place to live with an oppressed population, and Israel is a nice place to live with a thriving population. No further analysis needed. In a storyline, in a story headlined "On Israel, Progressive Jews Feel Abandoned by Their Left-Wing Allies," the New York Times wrote, "Progressive Jews who have spent years supporting racial equality, gay and transgender rights, abortion rights, and other causes on the American left, including opposing Israeli policies in Gaza and the West Bank, are suddenly feeling abandoned by those who they thought of as allies." The reaction to the attacks, from outwardly pro-Hamas protests to the mealy-mouthed statement of college presidents, celebrities, and CEOs, has exploded the comforting stories many on the center left have told themselves about progressive identity politics. They're waking up. They're waking up. I'm not sure we're going to see a vote blue no matter who strategy in the 2024 cycle. People are going to need to know where you stand. And the Democrat Party has been all too apparent on where they stand. Just the other day, Gavin Newsom went to China to hang out with Xi Jinping. The Babylon Bee posted a headline and said it was to get ideas for how to run California. But the Democrats, they know that Joe Biden is not the man for the job, and it looks like Gavin Newsom is trying to step up his presence. Step up his presence in national politics. Jesse Waters had this take on Gavin Newsom meeting with Xi Jinping. He says China is grooming them.
China is grooming Newsom, and Newsom is enjoying being groomed.
Yes.
This entire country has turned against the Chinese, and all of a sudden Xi Jinping's like, you know what? I'm going to roll out the carpet for that guy. And what does that guy do? He goes up and he walks right down to the red carpet with a big smile on his face and shakes his hand. Nationally, this is political poison because even Democrats are China hawks now. The whole party, both parties are getting out of there. And this guy, he's a California guy, and he doesn't see it. He only sees EVs. He only sees tech. And huge economy in California. It's the only reason you're involved with China in the first place. So he just went there, he lapped it up, and it's a practice run. And he's doing it right in Joe's face.
Yeah, and Joe needs to step his game up because Gavin Newsom does have his eyeballs on the presidency one way or another. They said he went to China to meet to tackle climate change and the fentanyl crisis. I'm pretty sure they fixed it. They fixed the whole thing. Dean Phillips is another Democrat who is officially launching a bid to become a primary challenger against Joe Biden. This one doesn't shock me. Dean Phillips has been basically going at Joe Biden since August. This is Dean Phillips back in August talking about Joe Biden.
And I want to say this about Democrats. It's really important. Joe Biden right now is down 7 points in the 4 swing states that will decide the next election. He has historically low approval numbers, Chuck. There are about 55% of Democrats would like to see an alternative. I can keep going down the list.
Yeah, we could keep going down the list, but every that was back in August, and there's new polling out now. Joe Biden now even less favorable. His favorability rating has dropped to a 4-year low. They're going to have to do something. And we're going to watch them all pivot today to gun control. The one issue where they can probably attempt to have the moral high ground and try to do what they say they always do, be the adults in the room, at least in their own warped way. So be on the lookout for that. Matt Murphy is checking in with us. He is going to be having a banger of a show today. I saw on Twitter Mark Green maybe stopping by the show. We'll talk to him next, see what he's got coming up on Murphy's show, which starts afternoon. It's Super Talk 99.7 WTN. 11:56 on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. It's Chris Hand broadcasting live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA studios. I'm down here for a couple days. They were nice enough to let me commandeer the podcast studio. I just saw this headline. They got the moderators revealed for the third GOP debate. I know I didn't really know when the third GOP debate was or if it was happening either. Wednesday, November 8th, 7 o'clock Central Time. The moderators, Lester Holt, Kristen Welker, who's the new Meet the Press host, and Salem Radio Network's Hugh Hewitt. So I don't know if the moderators are going to be any better in this debate, Lester Holt and Kristen Welker, but at least we'll be able to understand all of them. Because that last debate was tough, man. It was. The accents were pretty thick. I couldn't understand what was going on, and even my captions on the TV couldn't keep up with what they were actually saying. Very confusing. And I wonder if they're going to whittle down that list. I hope Chris Christie's still there. We need another Donald Duck moment. Also, I've been seeing everybody talking about the UFC Bud Light partnership deal. I think it's hilarious. Now, I don't really watch UFC.
They have a partnership deal?
Yeah, so they are $100 million partnership to become the official beer of the UFC. Sponsorship deal. So, I okay. Everybody's like, what? How could the UFC do this? I don't know. I don't drink, and I don't watch the UFC. But I don't think that this is going to change anybody's mind on the boycott, do you? If anything, I think it's kind of funny that Bud Light is just throwing good money after bad and thinks that this $100 million can fix things. I think that bridge has been burned, personally. I don't think that this is going to fix anything, but the deal worth $100 million, good for the UFC. Get that money, I guess. But I don't see it helping the Bud Light brand. Just me? Maybe it's just me. Thank you for joining me on the Chris Hand Show. It is Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Find me on Twitter, Instagram, Truth Social, at Chris Hand on Air. Hit the follow button. I will follow back. Matt Murphy is coming up next on Super Talk.